Good morning, City Church. Hey, I wanted to start this off with an open survey, and I want you guys to answer this question. You can just yell out whatever it is, but this is the question. If you could have anything right now that would make you happy, what would it be? Coffee? That's a good one. Where's my coffee? It's in the back. I'll get it. What else? Anything. Just yell it out. What would you? Oh, amen. Salvation for your son. That's amazing. What would make it, if you could have anything right now, what would it be? Oh, that's so sweet. Amen. Anything, right? Who else got something? A clean house. Amen to that. All right, one more. What's something that would make you happy? If you could have anything right now, $1 million, a cheesecake, whatever, what would it be? Somebody? Go ahead. What? Your Crocs. Fantastic. Yes. I'm sure that would make you happy. Right on. Well, cool. That's good that you guys know what would make you guys happy. See, this morning we're going to be talking about happiness. Actually, we're going to be talking about the problem with happiness. In our world, we have a problem with happiness. The World Health Organization has estimated that there are 5% of adults in the globe at any given moment that suffer with depression. We have a problem with happiness. That's roughly 280 million people in the globe. We have a problem with happiness. Here in the United States, the Health Day News did a study and found that close to 10%, or 1 out of 10 Americans, will suffer from depression. We have a happiness problem. And that number is getting worse with the younger generations. Here's a chart that shows that from people since 2008 to 2020, from 12 to 25, the number of people with depressive episodes has been going up. And some have suggested that now it's close to 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10 of young people are suffering from depression. We have a happiness problem. The leading cause of death from ages 15 to 24 is suicide. We have a happiness problem. I'm sorry to bum you out this morning with all these sad statistics, but we're going to be talking about this problem. The message title of this morning's message is We Have a Happiness Problem. And I'm hoping that we will learn what the problem is and find out what is the solution biblically. You see, I believe that we can find out how to solve this happiness problem, and the key to it is within the scriptures. You see, today we're going to be talking about a section in the scriptures called the Beatitudes, and you might have heard of this. It's found in Matthew 5, verse 1 through 10. And this is you guys might have heard this is when Jesus says, blessed are the so-and-so, blessed are the so-and-so. There's 8 different statements where he says what the Beatitudes are. But I'm going to take a different approach to the Beatitudes. Instead of dissecting every single statement that he says, I'm going to focus on the main thing that he started with each of these statements, which is the word blessed. And that word can be translated to happy. So Jesus is actually talking about happiness. And so we're going to see here through the definition of the word as we decipher it, what Jesus is talking about and how we can solve this happiness problem in our world today. Now, just a warning. Today is going to be like drinking from a fire hose. I am going to hit you with a lot of information because I'm going to give you the philosophical approach to happiness. I'm going to talk about the science and the biology behind happiness, and we're going to see how it's all tied together with biblical truth of what Jesus said about happiness. But I know that you're a different church. You guys are smart. I once did this to you guys before, and you guys were able to stick along. So just a warning, there's going to be a lot of information thrown at you. I don't expect you to remember it all. You can rewatch this, but just buckle in, all right? So we're going to talk about the Beatitudes found in Matthew chapter 5. But before we jump into the scriptures, I always like to give you a background and talk about what we're talking about. You got to understand the context here. We have been in a series called The Life and Ministry of Jesus. We're going through right now in this series, we're talking about the lessons and the teachings, the things that he said that we can learn from. And Pastor Kyle introduced us to a new section of the scripture that's called the Sermon on the Mount. And he gave us a 30,000-foot view of the Sermon on the Mount. This is where we're at. The Sermon on the Mount is the longest recorded teaching of Jesus, and many scholars believe that this was the main teaching that Jesus would teach people. He taught it multiple times in different places. That's why in Matthew 5, it's the Sermon on the Mount. In Luke 6, it's called the Sermon on the Plain, because he was teaching the same teaching to his disciples, to different groups of people, so that this would be his message that he would be talking to people about in the world in the first century. Now, the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount is what we're going to focus on. That is what's called the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are a series of 8 statements. 8 statements that Jesus says where he describes the central characteristics of kingdom people. This is what Christians are to be characterized as. And we're going to see that what he's talking about here has great implications to the problem of happiness that we have in our society today. So we're going to see that the definition of blessing, because that's what he starts each of these 8 statements with, is better described as, or defined as, happy. Now, before we jump into the scripture, I'm going to we need to understand what was the dominant worldview of happiness in the first century. And this is where, put your Philosophy 101 hats on. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the main thought of his day, what the audience, what the people in the land were thinking of happiness, because Jesus is addressing it. And so if we can understand how they thought of happiness, we can better understand what Jesus was saying. So, philosophy number 1, this is the philosophy of happiness in the first century. It all started with this guy. You guys might have heard of him. His name is Aristotle. He was the father of modern logic and Western logic. He's father of sciences. He wrote amazing philosophical pieces that have been going on throughout history. So how did what Aristotle wrote affect first century Jerusalem and that land? Well, one of Aristotle's students was a guy named Alex. Alex grew up and became Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great then took over most of the known world. And when he did that, he started to spread Greek culture to the places that he conquered. And he started to teach much of what his mentor, Aristotle, taught him. And so the philosophy of happiness began to spread. Now, a few hundred years later, the Roman Empire came to power, and there was another guy named General Pompey the Great. His childhood hero was Alexander the Great. And in 63 BC, Pompey the Great conquered Jerusalem, Judea. And what did he do? He did the same thing his hero did, Alexander, and he started spreading Greek culture, philosophies, and the teachings of Aristotle. So the happiness worldview that was started by the philosophies of Aristotle began to spread into first century Judea and the surrounding areas, the places that were conquered. And so we need to understand, what did Aristotle say about happiness? Well, this is what he said. He said, happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. This was the thought in first century ancient Jerusalem, in that area, that happiness was the meaning and the purpose of life. Now, what kind of happiness is he talking about? Because we need to understand happiness. The word happiness that he used is the Greek word eudaimonia. And this is the type of happiness that is well-being, flourishing, full of satisfaction, and it is the goal of being alive. Well, that sounds pretty good. So how do you get this eudaimonia? Well, Aristotle said that you have to have arete. And arete is translated as virtue, right? But it's not just like being virtuous, like a good moral person. It's better understood as excellence. So wait, how do you achieve happiness, eudaimonia, by being excellent? Well, Aristotle said that everything and everybody has a telos. A telos is a purpose. It has a function. And so if you accomplish your purpose with excellence, you will achieve happiness. And so, for example, anything can have a telos, like a knife, right? The purpose of a knife is to cut. And so if a knife is as sharp as possible and good at cutting, it is achieving its telos. Now, humans have a telos, a purpose as well. And so if there's a person whose purpose is to be a fisherman, and he is amazing at being a fisherman, he is achieving his telos. He's with excellence, his purpose with excellence. If your purpose is to be a musician, a singer, like Pastor Aaron here, he's amazing at singing, and if you are able to achieve your purpose with extreme excellence, then you are achieving eudaimonia, your happiness. And so to sum up, the philosophy of happiness in the first century, which Jesus was speaking to, is that happiness is found when you have excellence in your purpose. That's what he was speaking towards. And so when he talked about happiness in the Beatitudes, it was completely countercultural and revolutionary to what was the main thought of happiness back then. So let us read what Jesus said in the Beatitudes when he's talking about happiness here. Are you guys following along? All right, good. You guys are smart. I know you can stick along with this. All right, before we read, let's bow our heads and our hearts in prayer. Lord Jesus, we thank you so much for your love and your gift that you have given us, Lord. We know that you want us to be happy. And God, I pray, Lord, that you would just speak to the hearts, that this problem of unhappiness would be solved, and we would learn how, through your word, through your teachings, to achieve that state of happiness that you want for us. We thank you, we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Matthew chapter 5. Starting in verse 1, it says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, 'Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.'" Amen. If you came in here today, you got a note sheet, and the first point in your note sheet is this: Jesus wants you to be happy. Jesus wants you to be happy. Now, I'm gonna Bible nerd out on you guys real fast. Those 8 statements, the Beatitudes that we just read, were written in a literary structure, a poetic Jewish form called a chiasm. A chiasm is kind of like a sandwich. Okay, so there were 8 statements, right? And the chiasm sandwiches the main point of into the center. So example, these are the 8 Beatitudes that we just read, right? Statement number 1 and statement number 8 were paired together, and they're like the bread of the sandwich. Statement number 2 and statement number 7 are like the lettuce. They're paired together. Statement number 3 and 6 are paired together, and in the center is the main point. This is how they emphasize it. Now, a chiasm, when you read the Bible, is found all throughout Scripture. It shows up over 1,000 times. A lot of the Proverbs and the Psalms are written in chiasms, and when you find out what the central point is, you better understand it. And so when Jesus is giving the Beatitudes, he's saying that my kingdom people, my Christian people, are to be marked by the hunger and thirst of righteousness, which could also be translated as justice. So to have social harmony with people, and to be merciful, to be compassionate to people. But the thing that I want to focus more on is how he started each of these statements. It's with the word blessed. So what did he mean by blessed? That word can be better translated as happy. So kingdom people, Christian people, Jesus followers are to be marked with happiness. We're supposed to be happy. What does he mean by that? How do we be happy? Well, we got to understand the word that Jesus is talking about when he used the word happy. Now, all right, buckle in. I'm gonna get real detailed here, okay? To understand happiness, because we have a problem understanding it today, we need to understand 3 Greek words for happy. We learned the first one already. Eudaimonia. This is what is known as happiness, well-being, flourishing, full satisfaction, right? There was another word used for happiness back in those days, and it was called hedonia. Hedonia is where you get the hedonism from, right? This is the short-term happiness, the pleasures, right? This is someone who is in the pursuit of pleasure and the sensual things and self-indulgence. Hedonia, short-term happiness. Now there's a third word for happiness, and it is the word makarios. Now Aristotle, he said that makarios is happiness of the gods. That this was not available to humans, this was the gods' happiness, right? So this is the problem here. We have a problem with happiness, and I believe the problem is that in English, they're all happy. Hedonia is happy, eudaimonia is happy, makarios is happy, blessed. It's all the same. We don't have a distinction of the different types of happiness. But this is the problem, is that each one affects you in a different way. It affects your mentality. It affects your biology. We're going to get into that. They affect you in a different way. And because of that, there is a problem. And it's not just a first century problem. It's a today, modern day America problem. Why? How is that? How is what all this stuff, what Aristotle said, a modern day problem? All right, this is how is a problem in our day today. Before America was started, there was a guy, a philosopher in England, his name was John Locke. And he wrote a lot of amazing things that inspired revolutions, like the French Revolution and the American Revolution. And he was inspired by Aristotle. He studied Aristotle, and he put a lot of the philosophy, especially the philosophy of happiness, into his writings. John Locke was the guy who inspired the phrase, the pursuit of happiness. Now, someone was inspired by John Locke by the name of Tom Jefferson. You might know him. And so when Thomas Jefferson was tasked with being part of writing the Declaration of Independence in our country, he put a lot of John Locke's philosophies into the Declaration of Independence. And that's why we, the people, have the unalienable rights endowed by our Creator of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So in the foundation of our country, America, is the pursuit of happiness, the philosophy that Aristotle wrote. And if you're living here in America today, you are part of the pursuit of happiness, living the American dream. The problem is we don't have a distinction of the different happinesses. And so we need to have a distinction, because herein lies a huge problem. That where we are focusing too much on one kind of happiness, neglecting another, and we are ending up empty and wanting every time. Now, you guys following along with me? It's a lot here, right? Before America started, there was a guy who actually studied Aristotle and Christian theology and made a distinction with the different kind of happinesses. His name was Thomas Aquinas. He was a priest, and he made a distinction and said there is differences in happiness. The first one is called felicitas, and he would say this is imperfect happiness. These guys right here, it's imperfect happiness. It's temporal. It's dependent on external sources. And then he would say that there is something called beatitudo, perfect supreme happiness. This is where we get the Beatitudes from, the word beatitude. It's Latin. And so he is saying that there is perfect happiness. Okay, so which word did Jesus use when he said, blessed are the so-and-so, blessed are the so-and-so, happy are this? He used the word makarios. Makarios is the happiness that Jesus is talking about. But there's a problem here, because Aristotle, he said that that's happinesses of the gods. We can't enjoy that. And even Thomas Aquinas said beatitudo is perfect happiness. You're not going to achieve that in this lifetime. And so I'm going to springboard today here in City Church. I'm going to springboard off the distinctions that Thomas Aquinas made. See, that's little City Church here. That's us. With imperfect happiness and perfect happiness / joy. See, where I differ with these guys is I do believe that you can achieve perfect happiness and joy in this lifetime. Why? Because Jesus said so. And also throughout scriptures, there's examples of people who are exhibiting this kind of happiness. But before we dive into this kind of happiness, let's understand imperfect happiness, okay? So in your next point in your note sheets, it's this. Imperfect happiness is found by chasing the world's formula of prosperity. One of the formulas of finding happiness in this life is chase prosperity. The more wealth that I have, the more happier I'll be, right? Wrong. Really? Okay, there's been some studies. The Nobel Prize award-winning economist, he found that once you reach there's a certain point where wealth beyond it has no effect on your emotional happiness. And studies are coming out now that even if you get $1,000 or $10,000 raises, that the emotional state of happiness doesn't change that much. Now, what money does, it does give you a buffer from stress, okay? But as far as increasing your well-being of happiness, it doesn't. There's a study where they followed lottery winners. Who would like to win the lotto? If you won the lotto, wouldn't you be happy, right? Okay, so they followed lottery winners, and they marked, okay, how happy are you going to be if you win the lotto? And they found in the beginning, in the first year, yes, there was a spike. There was imperfect happiness, the temporal, circumstantial happiness. They did get happy, right? But then they followed up with them a year later, and they found out that they went back, or if not lower, to the point of satisfaction they were before they won the lotto. And the amazing thing is they contrasted that same study to people who became paraplegics, people who lost their ability to use half their limbs. And they said, if that happened to someone, they would be absolutely depressed, right? Well, they followed up with them a year later. And they found out that paraplegics and lottery winners, a year after the event, were at the exact same levels of happiness. So wait, so more money doesn't make me more happier? No, actually, giving away is better than gaining. There was a study done, and a lot of these studies are from a Harvard professor named Dr. Daniel Gilbert. There was a study done where they brought a whole bunch of students into a room, and they gave them each $20. Half of the students, they said, in 1 hour, you have to spend this $20 on yourself. Half of the students, they said, in 1 hour, you have to spend this $20 on someone else. Hour passed, they all came back, and they interviewed them and found out, how happy are you? And they found that the students that spent the money on themselves to gain things, they were sort of happy, like, yeah, I spent $20 on candy. All right, cool. However, the students that spent their $20 on someone else, giving it away, were extremely happy. The levels were remarkable, that it was showing that actually giving will make you more happy than getting and receiving and gaining. Now, the imperfect happiness is found also by chasing the world's formula of pleasure, right? Man, you know what would make me happy right now? If I had an In-N-Out burger with some pink lemonade. Oh my goodness, that would be amazing. I would find so much pleasure in that, right? This is the thing with pleasure. It's fleeting, and it's fleeting fast. Because as soon as you satisfy that hunger, guess what? A few hours later, you're going to be hungry again. You know what? Man, if I get the next, you know it'd be really pleasurable? If I got to get the next Samsung phone. Not the next iPhone, because that wouldn't make me happy. No. The next Samsung phone would make me extremely happy here, right? You know what they found? They're finding that actually, when you get an item that you're wanting, such as like a phone or something like that, that it's not as pleasurable because it wanes faster. Your satisfaction wanes quick. Actually, what's more satisfactory and more happy is the anticipation before getting it. Why? Because it's dealing with hope. You're hoping for something. Once you get it, you get over it. You're like, oh, okay. And guess what? In a few months, there's going to be a new phone out anyway. So what the heck? So pleasure is not a way to get perfect happiness. It's not a lasting happiness that will sustain you. And we can learn from the past. In Ecclesiastes, one of the richest men in the world, his name was Solomon, he went on a binge to try to find happiness. And in Ecclesiastes, he writes his journey, and this is what he found. We can learn from these people who came before us. He said, "And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure. For my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun." Pleasure is even fleeting. It's all chasing after the wind. The next formula that the world gives us to find happiness is chasing prestige and honor. Prestige and honor. To chase this, you have prestige and honor is dependent on other people's view of you. You only get prestige if someone looks at you with prestige, right? You only get honor if others look at you with honor. See, it's like being famous. There was a study done, and they asked a lot of the younger adults, younger teenagers, what is the main thing that you want to do when you grow up? And a lot of them said, I want to be famous. Specifically, I want to be a YouTube star. That's all dependent. Fame, and it's all dependent on someone else's view of you. Now, the problem with that is that you are dependent on the approval and the validation of others. And when you are dependent on the validation and the approval of others, you will always be comparing yourself with someone else. And you will always lose the comparison game. You will never be satisfied because your brain's gonna play tricks on you, and I'll prove it to you right now. What color is this bar? It's gray, right? It's completely gray. Your brain is gonna play a trick on you, and this is how comparison works. You'll always lose the comparison game. Why? Because look what happens to that gray bar. When it's compared and contrasted against something else, now wait, this side of the bar looks way darker than that side of the bar. Nothing changed, it's the same color. Your brain is playing a trick on you. You see, when you play the comparison game, you start to look at someone else's life and say, oh my goodness, their life looks so amazing, and my life is just looking way darker now. Your brain will always play a trick on you doing the comparison game, trying to chase prestige and honor and fame. Here's another example. You guys remember and recognize these guys? That's John Lennon. Right there, there's George Harrison. That's Paul McCartney. And that's that's not Ringo. This is the original drummer of the Beatles, right? His name was Pete Best. Pete Best was kicked out of the Beatles, and he was replaced with Ringo before they got big. And after he was replaced and kicked out, guess what? The Beatles became the most prestigious, the most famous, the most honored musical group in arguably the past 100 years. Now, if Pete Best lost out on this prestige, this honor, he must be completely devastated and just utterly miserable, right? Well, they followed up with him, and guess what Pete Best said? He said, I'm happier than I would have been with the Beatles. So chasing the formula of prestige and honor, it's not correct. The world's formula is not right. Last one. Happiness is found by chasing the world's formula of power. Some of you guys might recognize this guy. First, power. If I can climb the ladder of success, if I could be the number one head honcho, if I could be the king of the mountain, I will be happy, right? Well, this is former speaker Jim Wright. You guys might recognize him. Some of you guys. He was probably the most powerful Democrat in the House during the 80s. He fell from grace. He was part of a scandal, and he had to disgracefully resign. He fell from the highest heights of government and the highest place of power. I mean, the next level up from the Speaker of the House is the president, right? And he fell from that. And so they caught up with him years later and interviewed him. How was he doing in this time? And he said, I lost the most powerful position that is possible in the House. I'm utterly depressed. No, that's not what he said. You know what he said? He said this, I am so much better off physically, financially, mentally, and in almost every single way. So I show you all this because the world's formula is flawed. It's not correct. But you might get some imperfect happiness, some temporary happiness, but you will not find perfect happiness chasing the world's formula. And to understand this, I mean, there's been case after case of people who are rich, people who are famous, people who are powerful, and yet they're still utterly depressed and end their life in suicide. So the world's formula is wrong. Why? To understand why, we need to understand how our brain works and processes happiness. Our minds think we know what will make us happy, but in actuality, that's not the case. Now we're gonna dive into the biology of happiness. In the past 100 years, the field of neuroscience has made amazing discoveries to see how the brain processes happiness. How do we get happy? And they discovered that there are 4 happy hormones, as they call them, that govern happiness. I'm gonna talk about 2 of them. The first one you might have heard of, it's called dopamine. Dopamine is known as the feel-good hormone. right? It governs the reward system of your brain. And so when you do something cool and pleasurable and it'll bring you happiness, you get a hit of dopamine. It's a natural neurochemical. And you get stimulated and you get happy, right? For a time. See, the thing with dopamine is like a flash in the pan. It's a reward system. You get happy and then it goes away, right? And so most of what the world's formula is of happiness, of prestige, of pleasure, of power, of prosperity, most of those things are governed by dopamine. If you win the lotto, that's a dopamine hit. If I eat a really good cheeseburger, that's a dopamine hit. Gaming, all of gaming is dopamine hits. Social media, all of social media is governed by dopamine hits, right? The thing with dopamine is that your brain can OD on dopamine because it is an exciter. And so the receptors, if they get triggered too much with dopamine, they will die. And to protect themselves, they start to shut themselves off, certain ones. So more dopamine is needed, more stimulant is needed to reach that same level of satisfaction. That's how addictions start. And that's why King Solomon said that everything that I chased after was like chasing after the wind, because he was never satisfied. He needed more every single time. Because when you search for happiness through dopamine hits, that's hedonia. That's the hedonia side of happiness. You're going to be wanting every single time. Now, there's another side. It's called serotonin. Serotonin is, instead of an exciter, it is more of a regulator of your mood, of your happiness. And so what they found in the studies is that a decrease in serotonin in your brain is linked to depression. And so in order to get that up, a lot of doctors, they prescribe medication to kind of boost your serotonin levels. But studies are coming out and they're showing that, you know what? There's a lot of natural activities that kind of get your serotonin levels up to make you happy. That you can get 1.5 the amount of serotonin in your system if you just go outside and take a walk. That exercising, getting out into the sun, will actually boost your serotonin levels. Where social laughing, if you get together with friends and create those bonds, that boost your serotonin levels. Meditation will boost your serotonin levels. Now, this is my theory, and it's not proven, it's just my theory, that what happens, you saw that graph, where around 2011, the amount of depression in younger adults just skyrocketed. My theory is that what happens if we are so dopamine exhausted and dopamine fried that by the time someone gets out of junior high, they're completely fried and consumed with dopamine, and their serotonin levels are dropping. You see, studies are showing that with the rise of digital media and being stuck on your phones like this, you're constantly getting these dopamine hits and you're forsaking and negating the activities in life that boost your serotonin levels. People are not going outside as much. People are not doing face-to-face interactions as much. People are not sleeping as much. And so we have a burnout of this side of dopamine hits of happiness and a deficiency in this side of serotonin levels. That's just my theory. If you find a study, let me know that proves that. But this is how happiness works in your brain on a biological level. However, this is all still determined and dependent on neurochemicals and external circumstances, right? I think the happiness that Jesus wants for you is above these. It's beyond these. And so this is the next point in your note sheet. It's this, that true, perfect happiness is detached from worldly circumstances. Everything we just talked about of happiness is dependent on worldly circumstances. And even a good serotonin level, it's going to fade if the circumstances are not right. But God's happiness, it's detached from that. It's the long-term happiness that is gifted from God. And I believe that there are people in the Bible, in scriptures, and people that I have met personally that exemplify this kind of makarios, this perfect happiness and joy. A good example is Paul and Barnabas in the scriptures. In Acts 13, they were persecuted. They were beaten, and all throughout Acts, they're thrown into prison. And yet, despite the circumstances, they're rejoicing. They say that the disciples were filled with joy and with the Holy Spirit. There's a case when Paul was thrown into prison, and yet he's happy and singing. No circumstance should allow that kind of happiness. That doesn't make sense, right? In Philippians, Paul is writing from prison, and yet he's talking about rejoicing despite it all. In 2 Corinthians, he was talking about, and in your small groups, you're gonna learn about something that Paul was saying when he lists out all the negative things that he went through. He was shipwrecked, he was bit by a snake, he was beaten up multiple times, and yet he is saying that as sorrowful yet always rejoicing, I am. Can you imagine that? See, this type of happiness, this Makarios type of happiness, the Beatitudes happiness, is completely opposite from the world's happiness that is dependent on circumstances. This kind of happiness is birthed from within. It is a gift. You see, Jesus said, happy are the poor. What? Happy are those who mourn. Why? That circumstance does not make sense. No. Because this happiness is gifted from God. If you dive deeper into the word Makarios, which Jesus uses for happiness, it's derived from Makarios. M-A-K is also the word for long or extended. And so in this context, Makarios, it means properly that it is happiness extended from God. It is a happiness that is extended from a different source. It is not taken from things that you do. It is given to you as a gift. It is sourced from God. And so Aristotle was correct. It is the happiness of the gods. Where he was incorrect is that God would actually gift it to you, to let you take part in it. You see, in Matthew 25, Jesus tells a story about a servant. And he did good, and what the master says is, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. See, the joy is not the servant's joy. The joy is the master's joy that he says, hey, you can take part of my joy. That's what Jesus does. That's what God does. He lets you be a part of his joy. And so this kind of joy is a gift. It's beyond circumstances, beyond things like that. So how do you get this kind of happiness? How do you get this happiness that Paul exemplified, that throughout all the hardships, he was still happy? Well, here's the other part where Aristotle was correct. See, Aristotle said that everybody has a telos, a purpose, right? Where he was wrong is that purpose is not given to you by man. That purpose is given to you by your Creator. That your Creator, God, made you with a purpose. And in order to know your purpose, it's not ascribed by you, it is ascribed by him. And so what does your Creator, what does Jesus say your purpose is? This is the next point on your note sheets. You find perfect happiness and joy by loving God and loving people deeply. Love God and love people deeply. Jesus sums up everything in the law and the prophets. Everything in the Old Testament and the New Testament can be summed up into this statement: love God and love people. Mark 12, verse 30, this is where Jesus says this. And you should love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. This is the key right here, and I will prove it to you. There is a study that has been done, and I talked about this before, but it makes even more sense now speaking about happiness. There's a study that has been done called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It is the longest study that has ever been done scientifically. It started in 1938, and it's still going today. It's in its 80th something year. And what they did was they followed the lives of 700 boys. And these boys came from all different backgrounds. And for the entirety of their lives, they would follow and interview them to see how they were doing. And these boys grew up to be men. All sorts of different classes. Some were rich, some were poor, some were famous, some were powerful. One of them was a president of the United States. John F. Kennedy was a part of this study. And they followed them, and they found how some of them, they went from absolutely poor to absolutely rich, and some went the other way in the economic ladder, from rich to poor. And some got married, had kids, some divorced, some went off to war, some died. But what they found from this study, this extensive study, it concluded to this: to be happier and healthier, cultivate good, deep relationships. That's what they found in the study. That to be happier and healthier, cultivate good, deep relationships. See, God has made you to be social beings, relational with Him and with others. And this study says this, I'm going to read this. See, close relationships, more than the world's formula of getting prosperity, of pleasure, of prestige, of power, more than all those things that say is going to make you happy, the thing that will make you happy is close relationships. Close relationships with God and with other people. And it says this: those ties protect people from life's discontents, help to delay mental and physical decline, and are better predictors of long and happy lives than social class, IQ, even genes. Social connections are really good for us, and loneliness kills. People who are more socially connected to family, friends, and community are happier, physically healthier, and live longer than people who are less socially connected. And it's not the quantity of friends you have, but the quality of your close relationships that matter. Why do deep relationships, why do they affect us in a good way? Why is loving God and loving people deeply affect us in such a good way? I talked about serotonin a little while ago. There's studies that are coming out that the more serotonin that you have in your system, the better you are at battling different diseases, and the better your immune system is at recovering from those diseases. That actually boosting those levels up can do a good amount of well-being to your system. And things like meditating on God's word. Man, Jesus has been telling us to meditate and exemplifying meditation for years, and it's showing now that it is actually good for you. Because you're building a relationship with God, you're building a relationship with other people. When you meet in the church, he says, don't forsake the gathering of the church, of the believers. It's all good for us when we love God and love people deeply. You see, I want you guys to be happy. I want you guys to be healthy. I want you guys to live a long life. And Jesus does too. And that's why He is saying to you that this is the key. Happiness is the key, and it is done by doing exactly what He says, to love God and love people deeply. And so if you have a choice to make more money or to cultivate deep relationships, choose relationships. If you have a choice to be more powerful or more famous, or to spend time with your kids and your family and your loved ones, choose relationships. Choose loving God and loving people. Going back to the Beatitudes, if you look at the Beatitudes, what He says, happy are the poor in spirit. Poor in spirit is also humility. Happy are those who are humble. Humble people think of themselves less than others. Now, just to clarify, humble people don't think less of themselves. They think of themselves less, meaning they look at other people more. They raise them up more. So being humble, being poor in spirit, means that you have to relate with others and think of them more. Happy are those who mourn. To mourn means that you loved someone deeply. That the deeper the mourning is an indication of the deeper the love that you had. It had to do with others. Happy are the meek. Meek is strength under control. The opposite of meek is domineering. And so to be meek means that you are not domineering towards others. Righteousness can be translated, like I said, as justice. Justice means that you are being just towards other people. Merciful means that you are being compassionate. Mercy needs a companion. It needs a dance partner. You can't be merciful by yourself. You need people. Pure in heart also is considered as innocence. Pure in heart. Innocence means that you are innocent towards God and towards other people. Being a peacemaker means that you are bringing two warring parties together as one. Being persecuted means that there's someone else persecuting you. Every single one of the Beatitudes had to do with your relationship with other people and with God. And so you are happy when you are relating with other people in the right way, when you are relating with God in the right way. See, Jesus wants makarios for you. That's the type of happiness that is detached from external circumstances, where you can have the worst day of your life. You can be persecuted like Paul. You can lose family members and loved ones, but you can have the hope and the joy that is sourced within from God because the Master is letting you be a part of his joy. Amen? Amen. Let's bow our heads and pray. Lord Jesus, thank you that you want us to be happy people. Thank you that your joy is available for us to partake in. God, I pray, Lord, for those that are feeling unhappy, that are feeling a deficiency in this area of their life. God, I pray, Lord, that you would touch their souls in a way where your supernatural happiness, your supernatural joy will spring up from within them. Lord, that you would do a mighty work and you would fill them from the inside out, that despite the external circumstances, that they would still find joy. God, I ask that you do a mighty work in this place, Lord, that every single person that is listening to these words would experience your joy in such a real way. Lord, thank you for loving us and for extending this happiness to us. Let it be real in our lives. And if you're here today and you feel like God is calling you to partake in this joy, to be a part of the family of God, it's a simple commitment to just say, Jesus, I want you to be the Lord of my life. And if that's you, would you pray this prayer? It's a simple prayer. It's not mystical or magical. It's just a commitment that comes from your heart to God's. And just say this: Lord Jesus, forgive me of my sins. Would you be the Lord and leader of my life? Holy Spirit, would you live within inside of me? I want to follow you for the rest of my days. I thank you. I praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.